Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel, this time for a tarot deck review. As you see in front of me, I've got the Prediction Tarot pack. The author is Sasha Fenton. However, the actual artist that created the deck is a man by the name of Peter Richardson. And I tried to find some information on the artists, but I could not. This is an out-of-print deck from the 1980s, and that's probably why I'm not able to find much information on the artist. If any of you out there do have this deck or know anything about the artist behind the deck, please feel free to comment in the comment section further down beneath the video. But anyhow, let's get started. So actually, before I get into it, I just want to say that first of all, for reasons that will become clear as I go through the review, I'm not going to do a full flip through of the deck, but I will go through the Major Arcana and the court cards one by one in detail, so you can see those details, because I think it's a really interesting deck and I really love the art in it. But before I even do that, I came across the actual cards for this deck first in the accompanying book, which I picked up by itself in a second-hand bookshop back in New Zealand a long time ago. All right, so the deck does come with a book, which is also included in the pack, and I'll show you that. But I bought this book second-hand, for a few dollars, as you do. It was a second-hand bookshop in Auckland called Ponsonby Books. If any of you from New Zealand, from Auckland, might know the bookshop. I'm not sure if it's still there. This was like, gosh, such a long time ago now. And I saw it, and I didn't actually realize that it's an accompanying book to a deck. But I was very intrigued by the cards on the cover, all these images of the cards that you see here. And, of course, I didn't have the cards with it, and I didn't realize that this was an accompanying book until I started reading it. And I kept this book because I've always wanted to find this deck. I really liked the artwork in the Major Arcana, but it is not an illustrated pip deck. So the pips are just a number of the elements. And I will show you that further down through the review. But one thing I will say about the interpretation for the cards is that they are quite, well, as the name suggests, the Prediction Tarot pack, the interpretations given for each card are very predictive. And they're like a bit of a lens into like the old school meanings of tarot cards. So they're quite fatalistic in some ways, you could say. In other way, you can say that they're black and white. Let me give you some examples very briefly before I go into the cards. Okay, so let's have a look at the Eight of Cups. For example, the meaning says, there is a miserable situation involving the questioner just now, but there is light at the end of the tunnel. The message is to be courageous and patient. Things will work out eventually. It is possible that a blonde woman will change the questioner's life in some way soon. Okay, so, references like that are that specific, like a blonde woman and things like that, are quite common in the descriptions. Now, I'm not going to put that as a negative, because if you look into the work of Sasha Fenton, as I understand it, she was quite successful as a person that wrote books on spirituality, and I think she even founded her own, like a spiritual school or something along those lines, and was quite prominent in the past. And clearly, these are based on her experiences. And as a successful tarot reader and astrologer, I can't discredit, her wealth of experience in this field. And it could very well be that those interpretations work for her, right? That's something about once you work in any vocation that has a spiritual inclination in it, your personal approach to it and your experience sometimes is your own completely. and may very well differ from others. Okay, so this is something that you got to keep in mind with this book. Another example would be with the Nine of Swords. There could be illness, even a miscarriage, or some nagging worry. I find that this card often shows up shortly before the questioner's mother gets into difficulties or causes problems for others. All right, so there you go. I mean, that is really specific, and that's something that certainly doesn't apply to how I read and to how other people read. Interestingly, with the Nine of Cups and the Ten of Cups, she does say that, she mentions that the Ten of Cups to her is the wish card, and I always attributed that to the Nine of Cups, all right? So anyway, there's lots of quirks like that, which is fascinating. I think it's just another perspective, another lens into tarot reading. Now, this book was published in 1985, and the deck, all right? So there we go, 1985. I like this book because it's printed and bound in Great Britain, and you can tell the quality of paper is quite thick. Something really nice about the good old days when resource constraints probably weren't as prevalent as there are now, and probably the reason why we're facing resource constraints. But anyhow, the Major Arcana is quite in depth in the information. Don't know what else to say about that. I do like that there's some spreads, okay, and some suggestions for spreads that I would like to try, and I might do a specific tarot spread like this one here. I really like the Consequences spread. I think that's a really nice one that I haven't encountered before, but I would really like to give it a go. So yeah, there's quite a bit of, there's the annual spread, there's an astrology spread, and all sorts of things. So that's the book itself. So now, as I mentioned, this is out of print, and it has been out of print for quite some time. And the reason I bought it, as I mentioned, number one, I really like the Major Arcana cards, but also I'm quite drawn to decks that the Minor Arcana is not illustrated. That's something that's a recent thing for me. I've always been an illustrated Minor Arcana person, but now I think it's just as my practice matures, I'm starting to get drawn more towards cards that, or decks that have not illustrated Minor Arcana. I guess I'm looking for more of a challenge, perhaps. So I bought the second hand, and I paid $50 for it, Australian. I bought this in Australia. And I'm really happy with that. I think that was a really reasonable price, even though this deck is not in demand. You don't often see people looking for it. In fact, hardly ever. You also don't see a lot of reviews on it on YouTube, which is part of the reason I decided to do this review on it for anyone that's interested. Okay, so inside the pack, you've got the book once again. All right, it's exactly the same book, the same cover. This book is in pristine condition, so I won't be using this book. This edition is from 1990, but the first edition 1985, okay? But inside is the same information, right? Right down to the spreads included and things like that, all right? And then you're going to have the cards inside, and this is really flimsy, but that's just how it is. So let me talk a little bit about the cards themselves. This is these are the cards here. I've split them up into majors so I can talk about the deck as I'm flipping through the majors, and I'll do that in a second. But first of all, let's talk about the card backs. Super simple, non-reversible, and all you've got is this little castle tower towards the top half of the back. The next thing I want to point out is the size of the cards. So I've got here the Rider-Waite-Smith, this is a Centennial Edition, the standard size from US Games, and this is the Prediction Tarot, quite a lot smaller and narrower. Now, I'm a huge fan of this because I have smaller hands and it's always a bit of a pain to shuffle larger cards. And finally, before I go into the majors, the card stock. I really like it. It's on the thinner side. It is laminated. I'm not usually a fan of that, but I like the feel. It's hard to describe, even though it's like a thinner cardstock. I just really like it. I don't know whether it's because they're smaller. Yeah, really, really hard to determine. But anyway, in any case, I really, really like it. So let's talk about the images. And I'm just going to lower my camera so you have a better view of the majors as I go through them. I think that this is so nicely painted. And of course, keep in mind that in 1985, we didn't have the digital collage programs that we have now. That sort of software just was not around in those days. The Magician, really, really love this. The High Priestess. I just find that the way the cards are illustrated shows depth and maturity. I just find that these have got like a bit of an old soul feel to them, these cards, in the Major Arcana especially. And they are really classic in style, in my opinion. The color choices are not garish. You know, they're quite subtle and toned down, and I really love that as well. Like, it's quite atmospheric in some cards. Yeah, it's just really nicely and subtly done. But you still have, you know, the symbolism is still there. In the Lovers, you don't have that third person, but you do have, you know, the divine intervention, like the angel shooting his arrow. The idea that who we fall in love with, we don't really get much choice about that. I know some people disagree with me on that, but that's my view. The Chariot, yeah. This is based on having Justice as card number 8, and I love the excuse me, I love the Justice card. And also the Hermit is just gorgeous, really nicely done. I love the clouds and that celestial sky above them. Just, yeah, really, really, really nicely done. I find like it's like this, the color blue is the dominant sort of color in most of the cards. In Strength, we have a man instead of a lady with a lion. The Hanged Man, he's a bit battered and, you know, missing a bit of his clothes, and there's the coins falling out. Yeah, I find that Death is quite imposing because of this giant scythe. I suppose it hints at the gravity of and the significance of the passage of time and death itself. Lady Temperance, the Devil, Tower, beautiful, beautiful star card. Oh, and I love this moon. I absolutely love this moon. And the sun. I just think the Major Arcana is really stunning. Yeah, it's got a really, really nice feel about it. In my opinion, of course, it's very subjective. Let's have a look at the court cards. So one of the things with the court cards, I would say it's probably the suit that I think could have probably been improved on a little bit. So here are the pages. Okay. There's not that much variation in the court cards themselves, other than obviously the elements, the cup, sword, pentacle, and the wand. But with the pages and the knights, what's interesting is that, hang on, let me just move this a bit so you can see what I'm talking about. Oh, wrong way. You will notice straight away that the knights they're not on horses. And that's something that I think I prefer my knights on horses, okay? Because a knight's got to be a knight. He's got to be able to go on an adventure and cover a lot of ground, which is inherent in the idea of, the knights. It's all about adventure and seeking and the quest and the journey. And when you're on foot, it doesn't happen as much. You can only cover less at a time. Nonetheless, you can see if you get the pages and the knights in the same reading, let's say, in the same spread. For example, the Page of Swords and the Knight of Swords, you can tell, you can pick up some differences in the symbolism that will give you some clues. For example, the sword in the Page of Swords is just about as high as the page itself. Whereas in the knight, the knight is much taller than the sword. So the idea is that here, the knight is able to have control and mastery of that sword a lot more than the page. And you can relate that to the idea of thinking and communicating. And so the knight is a much more developed expression of that element. They're able to have mastery much more over their ideas and their thought processes and cover a lot more ground and process quite a bit more. At least that's how I would, these are some of the differences that come to mind. Okay, but still, it would have been nice to have the knights on horses. I do know that horses are really difficult to draw, though, because I tried to create my own Lenormand and I gave up at the first card. The rider on a horse. Anyhow, so that's the pages and the knights. And then we've got the queens, who are all facing the same way, by the way. And that's something that I would have, again, preferred some variation in my court cards. And then there's the kings. Okay, so we do a variation in terms of, the colors of the clothes they wear, and even their facial expressions. They are different people. They're not exactly the same person photoshopped 4 times, which I have seen in some decks, and it's really off-putting. At least, with these, there is variation, even though they look very, very similar, but they're not the same person. So that's the queens and kings. And then finally, the Minor Arcana. I haven't actually sorted it out by element. I'm just going to give you some examples. Because it's essentially the same object repeated depending on the number, okay? So, so they're not illustrated at all. So 10 of cups is 10 cups. Ace of wands is 1 1. 6 of wands is 6 wands. And now I haven't studied the Marseille in depth to be able to comment on the placement and the interaction between the wands and how they're placed and intertwined or how they connect. Okay, so I'm not going to make any comments on that. I'm sure that there is some symbolism behind the way that, instead of being, say, 5 pentacles in a row, you've got 2, then 1, then 2. I'm yet to go down that path and explore these pips in depth. But you get the idea, basically. These are not illustrated pips, but I absolutely love the color choice, and I love the way they've been done. I think it's really unique, and I love this deck for being a deck from the 1980s. Sadly it is out of print, and I've been very lucky to obtain a copy of the deck that is in pristine condition, and I've already bonded with it straight away. Don't ask me, but this deck has given me some amazing readings, even in the very, very short period of time that I've had it. So I will be using this deck extensively, I know, in the future, and it will get a lot of wear and tear. I'm a bit torn. On one hand, I want to keep it in this amazing condition that it's in, but at the same time, I am a reader, not a collector, and the decks that I keep, are reading decks. And the decks that I keep and that I really love are going to get a lot of use. And that's how it is. You know, but you know, you can still pick this deck up because it doesn't have a lot of following. It will come up for sale now and then for, I don't know, $100 Australian or so. I think $50 was a really reasonable price to obtain for it, and I'm really happy with that. I did wait. I actually saw the person selling this deck posted up about a month ago or so, roughly. I can't remember. And at the time, I really wanted it, but I knew we were doing a house move at some stage this year, and I'm really trying to rein my deck purchases in. And so I thought, you know, if it comes up again, it's meant to be. And lo and behold, it did. Nobody bought it the first time, and then it came up again, and I thought, right, it's now or never. And house move be damned, I just have to pack an extra box for my extra tarot decks that I'm currently acquiring. Anyhow. So that is the prediction tarot pack. I don't know if that's the official name of this deck, the prediction tarot or the Sasha Fenton tarot, even though, as I said, Sasha Fenton is not the artist. But yeah, I hope you've enjoyed this little review of mine. I will be working with this deck in the near future, and I might even bust it out for doing one of the spreads in the accompanying book at some stage in the near future. But until then, I hope you've enjoyed this. I hope it was informative for you or just entertaining. And as always, I thank you for being here with me, for supporting my channel and for watching my videos. Until next time, take care.